My guest today is Angie at Circle of Salt Astrology. She is a psychic medium who does have regular contact with spirit guides. And today she's going to share that with us. Angie, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me.
How's it going, Rich? Doing fine. I'm super excited to be here. I want to talk about some animal spirit guides. And I know some of you guys probably have thought to yourselves at a time, is this an animal spirit guide? I know with me, I have a lot of old lineage when it comes down to farming. So with my ancestors, they were farmers, so they had a lot of animal spirit guides during that time. And I've always kind of been curious on if these were animal spirit guides and how can you kind of determine on what an animal spirit guide is. I know with me, I've had a lot of moments where they are huge and scary. The only way I could describe that would be like, I had this massive tarantula come into my backyard randomly when I was thinking about on expanding myself on the web. And spiders are a lot to do with actual kind of like your connection to spinning a web, a network. And it was like that moment of like, should I do this? And here I'm like gardening and this thing just comes out of the earth and it's like huge. And it was like that moment of like, it scared the living daylights out of me, of course, but that's kind of like how I would describe most actual spiritual animal things where you can't deny that there's something going on there. Another one I would like to talk about also was we live in Vegas, of course, so we have a lot of coyotes. I myself had never seen a coyote until I was actually driving with my sister in order to go grocery shopping. Now, you really wouldn't be thinking like while you're kind of like going down this road that you'd run into like a coyote. Now, coyotes are really, really big on family. And here and my sister and I are like talking about how interesting it is, how that we just moved into our block. And now all of a sudden out of nowhere, we're going to go shopping for the family. And this huge coyote comes out of nowhere and tries to put his head into my car. And it was like that moment of like, what is that? Why would that even do that? And it was like that moment of like, you're channeling things that you don't even realize you're channeling. So that would be like my biggest thing. Like when it comes down to animal spirit guides, they don't come to you unless you're thinking of something that they're trying to help you with. For me, it was more so the fact that I was in glee. I was having fun driving for the first time in like my neighborhood to go and shop for my family. But really at the end of the day, it was more so this coyote was like, hey, like, congrats, like you're building your tribe, you're building your little family unit. And I had a bunch of roommates at the time, so that's also what made it like really cute. So super freaking random.
Do you think that maybe the spirit guides are able to take that form? And because sometimes I've heard people say that when they talk to spirit guides, they will appear in a form that you're most comfortable with. Do you think that may be it, or is there something else to it?
I honestly, I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that your spirit guides will send you things when it's like you most need them. So a lot of times, like, okay, perfect example. There was a time that I was talking to one of my girlfriends on the phone, and I was talking about a lot of times, like I know, like I had sent about Pluto in 12th house. Pluto in 12th house is a very dark placement for a lot of people in astrology. The reason why is because it's a very, very dark house with a dark planet. And also with mine, it's ruled in Scorpio. So the darkest sign in the darkest house with the darkest planet, Pluto. A lot of people with this placement don't like the fact that they have gifts. And the reason why is because you bring in a lot of dark energy. It's almost like that feeling of like you've always been able to see them. So my point is that when I was kind of like spiting my gifts, being like, you don't want to have these type of things, you don't want to have these things happen to you. Like if you actually do see these entities, you would see that it's not a gift. No joke. I have never had a cockroach appear in my living environment because I'm like one of those crazy OCD peoples where I clean everything. A massive cockroach ended up literally crawling up my drain, up into my bed, right when I was talking about that. And it was big. My point is the fact that cockroaches, a lot of people don't realize, are very connected to the underrealm. And it's also has a lot to do with cursing your gifts and not feeling blessed in those things when you are blessed. So it was almost like spirit was waking me up to the fact that this is a blessing, and you should never ever say that it's a curse, because it's not a curse. This is something that you're connected to. And if you fear it, I'm going to just keep waking you up to the fact that you can't be afraid. So that's kind of how I would say when you hear from a spirit guide, it's most times when you're seeking guidance, when you're doubting yourself. Like for me with the networking thing with the spider, I was doubting myself. I was like, I don't think that this is what I'm supposed to do. And then that's when the spider emerged, where it was like, yo, you are supposed to do that, and I'm going to freak you out. So I've kind of gotten to the, like I said, gotten to that point in my life where I see them so often when I'm in doubt or in fear that I can't doubt my own gifts or doubt my path. So that's when generally you see them. Or it's like a clarity thing where it's like, here's clarity, here's your moment of what you need to see. So that's like, and also same thing, I had a tarantula hawk. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but I also had a tarantula hawk come up when I was also talking on the phone. I can't remember what I was talking on the phone about, but it appeared to me in the grass right when I was like outside walking. And also it was like one of those things where I was trying to protect my family from something. I've never looked up what a tarantula hawk means, but I have a feeling of that's kind of what it would symbolize, because I remember I was fearful of that. I was fearful of protecting my family from something. So like I said, but it's mostly when you're in tune that way, where you're like, I need guidance, but it's like waking you up to your own doubt. Like that's what I think that they're there for. It's like, if you can't hear them from this other side, like they keep sending you spiritual messages and you're not picking it up, it's like, okay, you ain't listening, so I'm going to send you something crazy big and scary, and then you're going to listen.
Yeah.
You know,
So
like,
so basically, whenever you find yourself like looking for guidance, the spirit side will send you a gigantic
yeah,
animal of some sort, and then the symbolism of the animal
yes,
is that's interesting.
yeah,
I've
like
never heard anything like that before. That's fascinating.
well, it's like they always like, I know when I looked up about it, like it's kind of weird. Like I have, like I said, I feel like it's kind of fairy lineage, I guess they kind of say. It's like old folklore that farmers, because they're so connected to the ground and gardening, I guess that they're very connected more to the spiritual realm. So if you look at it as like these spiritual guides are just things on the other side of the dimension that we can't see. So I don't look at them as like animals. I look at them as things, other entities that are kind of coming through from the other side, just like fairies. They say a lot of times, like, whatchamacallit, hummingbirds are very connected to fairies. They say that they are just fairies on the other side of the realm. We just can't see them. So that's kind of like where I kind of feel like the lineage came from.
Yeah.
That's also where I'm really interested with also the Native American kind of culture. Like I was really surprised, like when I was looking back, like I thought I would have that type of lineage, but I'm just all straight up like Viking, you know, like that's just like all my lineage is all from like Denmark and all from the Scandinavian side. But they were very much so like spiritual witches. They were very into gardening. They were very into the ruin stones, also card reading. Really, really cool. Other side note, both my grandmother and my great grandmother, a lot of people don't realize that in German heritage, they didn't know in the war that they were actually like locking up Germans as well in camps, because they didn't know who was bad and who was good. So they were just, you know, pretty much barricading villagers, like from the Russian side. So my grandmother and my great grandmother were actually stuck in one of these camps for 4 years of their lives. And during the time, people were in a very dark place. So they would do, like, all they had was a deck of cards. So they would be giving people hope through reading. So it was something that was interesting that was passed down to me, because like I said, from the lineage of them doing that. But most witch lineage, you don't know. It's like that moment of like, people don't like to tell you that you have those type of gifts. They don't, they want to keep it hidden, you know what I mean? So until I got way older and started really diving into my heritage, did I find these things out. It's always one of those things where your aunt's like, well, now that you've came out about all this stuff, I think I'll talk to you about these things. Here's some gifts, here's some old decks, here's some of your old kind of things from your ancestors that has been going on. So that kind of like spiraled into a whole nother conversation, but that
Oh
also
yeah.
is what I feel like kind of where these things come from. It comes from like it's passed down from multiple kind of generations. A lot of times in astrology too, like my Pluto and Moon are conjunct, both in Scorpio. So it's really interesting that the same kind of conjunction has came from my grandmother's side, my great grandmother's side, and further forward, meaning the fact that that same dark energy has traveled through in order to transform people. Like it's a dark energy, but it's something that's why they had to go through the camp. That's why they had to go through these massive dark things in order for to bring that side forward. So kind of little fun things there for other people out there are like, where did this come from? Probably need to look in your little, chart, see where it came from, see where it kind of stemmed from. You know
Yeah.
what I
Do you ever have any contact with any other type of spirit guides, or is it just animals?
definitely like typically spirit, just like how you guys do, definitely where it's like you see the spirit numbers as well as I don't know how you card read, but I know with me it's always like more so an energy I always feel in my palms. So it's always like kind of a feeling of like I used to play games when I was younger, like where you used to play the match game where you try to find the match. That was how I kind of discovered about my card reading abilities, was more so the fact that whenever I play the match game, I could find every card through my palm.
Hmm.
Like I could kind of feel what I was looking for. So when it became like actually a normal card reader now, it's like that's some type of energy that I use. Like, but I feel like some people are more intuitive, like through their mind. They always connect through spirit. It's just what you're kind of harnessing through. As for other spirit guides that I've had, for actual like ghosts. That was something that I also talked about briefly in my summary. Um, with my ancestors, when we travel over, we say goodbye to one another. So this has kind of been passed down, also same kind of thing. My great grandmother saw my grandfather on the opposite side of the family. I know that's kind of confusing. Um, when my parents got together, like they have their parents and my dad's parents, right? They got, two separate kind of families, right? So my great grandmother, she was living in New York at the time. My grandfather was living in Florida. Now he ended up committing suicide. My great grandmother saw him in the window, knocking on the window, and she was like, oh my God, he's dead. And my mother ended up getting a phone call from my great grandmother telling her, he's dead, I know he's dead. She's like, I don't know, I can't get through him on the phone, this and that. My mom ended up finding out later that, he had committed suicide. So what she had said was true. Same kind of thing with my great grandmother. My great grandmother couldn't see me when she was little. Excuse me, when I was little, she wanted to see me. So when she passed over, she came to see me also through the window. And it's kind of funny, like, especially when you think of somebody seeing you through a window, but that's honest to God where my mom knew I was gifted when I was 4, when I saw her in the window. And it was something that was passed down, like I said, from my great grandmother, had seen the same thing at the exact same time. It was just generations apart. So it's our belief that she saw him and then she traveled over and then saw me when she was leaving too. And I feel like when I pass on, I'll see my mother pass kind of feeling,
Yeah,
or vice
you
versa.
do hear that a lot with people who are gifted, if you want. I don't like that word, but that's the only word we have. But
Right?
with people who have those gifts and whatnot, it usually does go back like a lineage, like it's something that's passed down from the family and whatnot. And for me, it's very much the opposite. When you were mentioning, how you learned how to read, and for me, it was a total accident. I didn't even know I knew how to read. I was just playing around on my YouTube channel and it blew up and everybody started pursuing me, asking for readings, and I'm like, I don't even know how. And then it was just something that chased me down. It hasn't, nothing like that is in my family. So,
I thought it might be rich. I mean, it might be buried. Most times with that kind of stuff, it's buried. I didn't know until way later. It's like you have to start digging, and that's also where, like, same thing with the not being able to know you know how to read. I used to do it as a party trick. I used to literally go and we'd be at a party and I'd be like, bring me a deck. I'm going to go and do some readings and see how this stuff happens. And then it's also one of those clarities where they're like, yeah, that person actually is doing this. That person's doing that. It's like, and it's like that moment of that's when you just know kind of feeling.
yeah. Well, I do come from a family that is completely broken apart.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
broken apart. We're all over the United States and random states and cities. It is no real family, So I guess it could be.
Definitely. It's mostly, like I said, people don't like to talk about those things anyway, most times. It's like, who wants to talk about the fact that, like, they're the weird ones of the family? So they always try to keep it like, for safety too. Like, I get it. There's a lot of people out there that are more accepting, unlike how things were before. Like, I feel like in our generation, I'm so happy there's so many people that have come out, because a lot of times, we didn't want to talk about the fact that we liked astrology or tarot or whatever, because you don't want to be known as those people, because you don't want to be stuck into a society that feels like, you could end up in an insane asylum kind of thing.
Well,
Most people like,
and until you start talking to some like scientists and stuff, because there actually are scientists out there who do the research to prove it, and then that's what made me become more confident and outspoken with it, because it just always blows my mind how these people who are so hardcore about science, like I know this one dude personally who is so obsessed with space. He's obsessed with it. He posts about space all the time on social media. He knows all the little galaxies and he's obsessed with it, but he thinks astrology is stupid. And I'm like, you completely understand and accept the fact that the moon can pull the fucking tide to shore, but you don't think that it has any effect on this pool of mush that's in between your ears. I don't understand how people can like be so closed off to that,
it's true. I mean, honestly, like, astrology also goes back even to Edgar Casey, where it's like, I love the studies. I don't know if you've ever read anything about Edgar Casey, but he says the reason why, like, that's our cluster of stars. It's almost like somebody took a snapshot of what our soul was doing when it passed through. So that's also where I always tell people that are kind of like agnostic. I'm like, it's kind of like literally if somebody took a photo of it right when your soul was passing into your body. It's like, and that's also what's so fascinating, is being able to kind of look at that. Also, we have progressive charts too. So a lot of times only people want to look at what we were born with. After we turn 35, you transcend into your next sign. And a lot of people feel like it's like, oh, I'm only this sign. I'm sorry, baby, but once you start getting older, it's like we transcend into the following sign in front. That also probably, like, I know, especially with your Aquarian, you're pushing more into your Pisces now when you're getting older. So you're going to become more psychic, more enlightened, more fascinated by these things beforehand. And it's because of the fact that you're taking the teachings that you used to know and widespreading that now. It's a very fascinating concept. That's also where people are very, when people just say the sun, it's like there's so much more. And it's like, I don't blame people for being like, I don't believe in it. It's like that moment of like, because you're only seeing a small portion of a massive science. It's almost like saying like math, like I know how to do addition. It's like, cool, there's subtraction, there's multiplication, there's division, there's all this other stuff. Like, but it's like, but if I don't just know this, like that feels like widespread. So.
Yeah, and there's also people too, and one argument that gets on my nerves, and you usually hear this with people who are in relationships where the sun signs are not a very good mixture. Oh, it's there's more to it than just the sun sign. And I'm like, yeah, I agree, there is a lot more to it, but that's not an excuse to say that the sun sign placement isn't important. Some people like to use that argument and say, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm in this, and I'm like, oh, it kind of does matter. The sun sign placement is pretty important.
Definitely. Also, when it comes down to sun signs, it's actually more relevant in a man's chart because the sun represents your masculinity. It represents the things that women look for in a man. So a lot of times people misinterpret when you're putting the two signs together. Those are the two things that actually she's looking towards more towards her partner. So it's like, yes, those are her ego, what she is, but it's more so what she's attracted to than just her sense of being. That's also why I always tell men, like, you guys are the ones that are more so the fact that you guys are channeling that energy, and it's because you're masculine. The
Mm.
feminine, we relate more to our Venus and our moon. And it's because of those are the things that are buried and our nurturing side, our femininity. That's also if you're looking into a man's chart, you want to look at his Venus and his moon. You're not going to look for his sun unless he was gay, then you would look in his sun, but in his sun, that's just who he is as in his integrity. But it's also has a lot to do with those two signs that are connecting together. And I feel like that's also where I feel like we have to balance. Also, Mars in a man is very, very important. Mars and Sun are the biggest thing in a man's chart you want to look at when it comes down to who he is as a person. But in a woman's chart, you want to look at those two things. You'll be like, but where's her Mars located? Because I want to see the type of guy she's into. Or
Okay.
where's her Sun so I can see like what would be good for her partnership. Also the houses play a big role too. Like if she has a lot of planets in her seventh, that would make it a better match. So I feel like that's also what kind of explains it a little better rather than always just looking at it as a broad spectrum of matchmaking. Unless you're looking at gay couples, like I said, they're the only exception of the rule because
Yeah.
yeah, they need to have two, well, I guess they have also a feminine side too, but
And
depending on
I think there's a part that where once we become aware enough of ourselves, I mean, after a certain point, I firmly believe that you can collapse all that. If you are aware enough of your own energy and you're aware enough of your partner's energy, and there's two people who are that self-aware, I think it's my contention that they could create a new type of union that could work, in a different way than what, just say, oh, well, this is who I am. The only thing I can find is what's supposed to be compatible for me. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
definitely, definitely. I mean, that has a lot to do with self-awareness and
Hmm.
also some people, some signs, like I said, with certain placements also, I feel like they like to go with more of a struggle because they like self-development. And it's like I have to tell people that sometimes when I pull charts where I'm like, I hate to tell you this, babe, but it's like you're drawn to people that are not suited for you because it's something that you need that fire to. So it could be
Yeah.
also one of your placements where it's like, I need that fire. I need to have some friction. I need to have
Yeah.
something going on here because I get bored, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and I know that my wife and I got our charts read about couple months ago, and I don't know anything about charts and stuff, but the lady went, "Oh, whoa," because there's all these squares. There's whatever that means. She said there's a bunch of squares. She said your average astrologer, if they took a look at this, they would say the two of you are going to be a wreck together. She said the best thing the two of you could do is continue to build each other. And I'm like, well, that's all we do. That's what, we're constantly, challenging ourselves to grow and evolve and become better versions of ourselves. And she said, well, that's the reason. So is that kind of like what you were talking about just a minute ago?
Definitely, definitely. Squares are going against the current. I feel like that also would be one of those things where I feel like sometimes people always say, like, if you don't have certain sync stuff, that's like, I guess I believe the term that you would call it. If you don't have two people that are like, have a lot of signs that are make it easier to get through arguments, that could be also a thing. But also being an Aquarian, I mean, naturally, you guys are more interested in people that kind of think differently than you. So it's like a lot of times, a lot of people don't realize that depending on the sign, you want to have a square because of the fact that they like to have that. Like I don't know where your Mars or her Venus is located, but definitely with squares, that just means opposing signs that typically don't get along. It's like really stubborn energy. It's like I'm stubborn, I'm my way, they're their way, and we can't change. But also a lot of people don't realize that being squares, we have a lot more similarities as people. We both agree to disagree. kind of feeling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my Mars and her Venus are both the same sign, Aquarius.
Oh,
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and
Very
our
cool.
moon signs are both Virgo, you know? So,
Interesting.
yeah, we're definitely a dynamic that, that I don't see any other way we could function together other than to grow and evolve. I
Definitely.
don't know how long you've been following me, but I'm not the same person that I was 2 or 3 years ago, and
Oh,
that's
no, no, no,
yeah.
definitely. I have followed you for a minute. I've got that stalker tendency.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
like it's like my moon is in Scorpio, so immediately if I find something fascinating, I'm like, I gotta know all about this thing. Like,
Oh,
so,
okay.
but also moon and Virgos are the same way. You guys like to dive in deep in order to analyze. So that's also why our types of signs get along really well too. But I feel like Moon and Virgos also get along really well with Moon and Virgos because of that. It's because both of you guys have the ability to look at your emotions in more of an analytical way.
Hmm.
It's almost like two databases where it's like I don't get so caught up in emotions. Like it's more of the fact that, you guys see things in more of a detached way in order to make things work. So I feel like, even though it's got a lot of squares, that I feel like, it's like you understand each other a lot better.
Yeah.
So more power to you. Like I said, like one of my best friends, she has Moon and Virgo and actually is dating a Moon and Virgo as well. And she was saying that same kind of vibe. Me, I'm not the same. My Moon in Scorpio, if I got another Moon in Scorpio in the room, it's like we were like out to get each other. It's like we're
Oh,
both like over analyzing, like, are you gonna like screw me over or am I gonna screw you over? It's like two people that are like two detectives. It's like we're
yeah.
going against each other because of that. So it depends on the sign. Sometimes, like, I feel like astrologists have a tendency to not, also, like I said, don't look at the progressive chart. They're only looking at the things that were previous. So if you're not looking at what's going on right now and you're only looking at things that have gone on in the past, it's like, what are you really looking at? You
Hmm.
have to find innovative actual astrologers. You don't want to just look at astrologers that are like stuck in their cookie cutter way kind of vibe. It's like they
Yeah.
got to be like, people are kind of moving up. That's my opinion on it though. Like,
Okay.
and being an astrologist, I have a lot of them. So I've met so many that are one side or the other side, where it's like some that are like so set in their ways. Like, and also sometimes tarot card readers will be like, if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. It's like, dude, everybody's kind of got their own vibe. It's like, who am I to tell this person they're not doing it right? You know?
Absolutely. So do you offer services? Is that correct?
Definitely. Definitely.
What all do you do exactly?
I do astrology readings. I also do tarot card readings, runestone readings. I also do house blessings. House blessings are one that I didn't expect myself to do, but honestly, I had so many people coming forward after I was like opening up about my darker side that I have to deal with that I realized it was like a gift that I didn't really want to use. Kind of like the cockroach kind of scenario where it's like, oh God, like I got to do this. Like, of course I do. Like,
Mhm.
but it's also one of those things that, like I said, you kind of like learn more gifts as you kind of go about it. So those are my four primary of what I definitely do.
Okay.
Um,
What would be the easiest way for people to get a hold of you?
on my what you call it on my Instagram is my biggest following. I do YouTube. I also do Facebook. I do all of it. But I don't know, Instagram, people love me on there. I don't know if it's because that they're more relatable to younger people. Maybe because I talk a lot. I'm kind of goofy, and most of my videos are all like music videos. Like if I do like, all the signs, I like do a video that's symbolic for that sign. Like for Aquarian, I did like everything in outer space, and I like got dressed up like an actual like astronaut, and I was just like everything's about space, and like I've got like all my different tools. We're going to talk about things like in more innovative way. I also did one that was like all in technology, so everything was like Daft Punk, like doing like cyber kind of stuff. People love it, like, but that's like more so I think like for the older people, they like me, but I feel like it's more so the fact that mine's like more quick, quirky, kind of goofy, which is my personality anyway.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I
As you
will.
can kind of tell, like,
I'll definitely link all of your social media in the description of the video for anybody that wants to go check her out. Was there any other experiences you wanted to share?
I definitely wanted to talk about, I feel like I know you were talking about also the incubus kind of thing. Like, I don't know if you also like wanted me to talk about that briefly, like how to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
battle.
Anything. It's totally, the floor is yours.
All right. I also kind of wanted to talk about darker energies, especially with people that have these darker placements. I feel like a lot of times, like I said, most people with these placements, these Constantine placements, don't like to talk about that kind of thing. It's more so the fact that a lot of them feel like they don't want to come forward because they don't want to feel like those weird people. Um, Darker energies that you actually are combating are definitely things that you bring in yourself. So when I do these house blessings and stuff like that, a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm haunted by this thing, this dark thing in my home. You're not haunted. A lot of times you are bringing that energy in, which is giving that thing power. So that's also where when I go in to do a house blessing, I'll tell you flat out if you have something in your house or not. Like, and if you are going through a dark time in your life, a divorce, a death, like if you feel like having suicidal thoughts, these are things that will bring in these dark energies. And make no mistake, when you pull something out from those dimensions, it's because of the fact that you brought it in yourself. You opened the door because you were bringing in that dark energy, or someone around you did, kind of thing. I know when me myself, when I was attacked, I thought that I was going through a very dark time in my life, that I thought I was going to die. So I was channeling this thing because of the fact that I was really, really afraid on if I couldn't channel something light, maybe if I channeled something dark, I'd be able to still live on. And that was my mistake. It was like that moment of I was so afraid that I was like, I don't care, just something help me. Something. I don't care if it's bad, good, whatever, just help me get home. And I was driving on the freeway. It was really late at night at the time. And I was detached from my family. And it was like that moment of like, I can't call anybody. And if I fall asleep at the wheel, I'm just going to be screwed, kind of mentality. My point is I called something dark, and then this thing ended up trying to attack me at night. And for me, one of the biggest things was the fact that a lot of times when I was attacked, I didn't believe it. I was like, this thing's not real. Maybe it's all in my head. When this thing attacked me, my ex was sitting next to me on the bed. He had woken up to this thing attacking me. And even though he couldn't see it, he woke up to me levitating. And it was like that moment of like, I felt this thing coiling around me, like holding on to me, trying to merge with me. That's what these things do. A lot of young girls I've kind of talked to, 16, 18, all the way up until about 21, have been attacked by these things before. That's also why I didn't know what it was. Like I had never looked up in demonic kind of thing. But my point is I've met other women that have kind of gone through the similar kind of scenario that I've gone through. And it always helps them when I say, hey, like I've been attacked by this thing too, you're not crazy. Like, but my point is that in order to kind of know that like this thing was real, I had to channel Archangel Gabriel in order to get it off me. And in order to do that, you have to realize that if you are being attacked by a demonic force, understand that there's higher entities above them. So if you're channeling Archangel Gabriel or Archangel Michael, they're higher in the spectrum than these things are. So that's what I did is I channeled Archangel Michael in order to get it off me. It was like that moment of like, I'll never forget it. It was like standing like, face to face with this thing. And here I'm channeling Archangel Michael, and I had ended up punching it right in the face. And when I ended up hitting this thing, it ended up turning into almost like a dark cloud that my fist had hit and went through. And then all of a sudden it turned all white and went into like almost like through the window behind me. And then I was released and I ended up falling down on the bed after I had broken the consciousness. My point is that my ex ended up seeing, people had thought that I'd been hit by a car because I had these massive bruises all over me. It was like these massive bruises with markings showing where the creature had touched me. So I think it's also very interesting that if you look into demonic force touching, a lot of times they leave marks on you on where it touched you. And it was all over me. Like there was no denying what happened to me. It was like that moment of like, out of all the times where I was like, could this possibly be? I had never woken up to somebody being like, no, I saw you levitate. No, I can't lie. The fact that I have markings all over my body. So that's also where I feel like a lot of times people will be like, did that really happen to me? I had someone in the room. I had these actual things touch me. I feel it. Like I could feel where this thing had moved around on my body. So I want to tell people, that would be my message. Never feel fear, because there's always higher angels that protect us, kind of.
Okay, yeah. I was just about to ask you before we wrap it up if you had a positive message that you wanted to share with the viewers.
Yeah, my positive message would be definitely like, never forget that you can channel Archangel Michael if you ever feel like you are afraid. A lot of these people that these types of things happen to have fear, but you can't have fear with these things. You have to walk in knowing the fact that I have a higher person behind me that can spite you. And that will channel the fact that you can find your inner courage. But most of my clients are always in fear, where they're so afraid, and you never need to be afraid. It's like there's, like I said, a higher level force that's always surrounding you. So that's what I would close with.
Awesome. Well, that
You
was
need
very
help, let me know, kind of feeling. I'll come and fight them for you. I'll show you.
cool. Well, yep, I will be linking your social media and whatnot in the description of the video. Thank you again for joining me. You have a good day. I wish you the best.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rich. I love you guys to death. I love your freaking stuff. Keep up the hard work.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're amazing. Thank
All right.
you. All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye.